Okay, good evening. Welcome. The board has been in closed session since 6 p.m. for several items. One is collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. 2, litigation, when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. C, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. D, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body. And E, approval of December 12th, 2017 and January 9th, 2018 closed session minutes. And we have 7 board members present, none absent. Could we rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is public comments. We ask that you speak for up to 3 minutes. And we have a few names here tonight. The first is Deanne Mazzocchi.
There we go. Good evening. As a parent, I've come to somewhat dread initiatives that are coming out of the middle school because more than one time it's caused me to wonder if our strategic planning motto should just be don't do anything, stand there, because there's a concern that when new initiatives come in and parents provide feedback, things tend to not improve and they go south. So we had a middle school task force, and there were all kinds of rosy promises about what it had done, what it had accomplished, and recommendations, but those did not seem to match reality because the feedback that I personally received from other parents, from members of the task force, from other teachers, is that the middle school task force it was not ready for prime time. It was being pushed through by the superintendent because a lot of money had been spent on the task force, and there was an impression that something needed to get done or else he would have an accountability problem. But ultimately, you're here because there are 4 requests on hand. One of them is to incorporate band and orchestra in the school day. As a violinist myself, as a child who is in music in this wonderful band and orchestra program, to incorporate it into the school day is going to adversely impact student performance. The only rationale that I've seen for putting it into the school day is not that it's going to make our students better at music, it's that maybe they're going to be able to get some more sleep. If there's a concern about students coming to band and orchestra sleepy, there's a very simple solution, which is raise awareness with parents so they can make sure their child gets to bed on time. It is not to all of a sudden start redoing the schedule so that our students have less time to rehearse. They're going to be doing less challenging things if they're in 6th grade because they're not going to be able to sit with the 7th and 8th graders. And moreover, you're going to actually make our program less effective compared to our peer institutions. Project Lead the Way, the superintendent lauds it, but much like the theory behind the student-led conferences, the data and research does not justify spending the money on Project Lead the Way. In 2016, Hess, Sorge, and Feldhaus at the American Society for Engineering Education's annual conference, June of 2016, they reviewed all the literature on Project Lead the Way and its performance and found, quote, minimal evidence that the program led to improving students' mathematics and science abilities. What are we buying it for if it can't improve those things? Making world language a choice. Again, you are going to put students at a disadvantage by the time they get to high school and do college preparation if they cannot start language earlier rather than later. And certainly not in favor of adding in more things that are called acceleration but seem to have no intellectual rigor to them. And I'm certainly, as a parent, not particularly impressed by one of the proposed offerings of music in pop culture. The peer schools that have been selected are also not inspiring, and some of them, in fact, their student performances have been trending downwards. So consequently, I would urge the board to actually vote down these proposals and once again get back into an improvement mindset as opposed to a downward trend mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Galarza.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Galarza. I am a music teacher, and I have 3 students who attend District 205 schools, one of whom is a middle school student. At November's board meeting, I spoke to you all, and I asked for more data, more surveys, more research to support how to successfully move BOC into the school day as part of the middle school recommendations. We've heard about the studies of the American Medical Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I did a little bit more reading about the studies done by these 2 organizations to find that the main reason for this later start time, which seems to be the largest support that we have for this change, is because a later start or an earlier start time than 8:30 a.m. Is said to hinder a student's health, academic performance, behavior, and general well-being. So my question is, if this is our reasoning for moving band, orchestra, and choir during the school day, where is the data to show that these are where our students are lacking or not succeeding in their education? I would like to see data to show how our current BOC students are struggling in these areas and how this change is going to allow for greater success for all students in these 4 areas. I'd also like to remind everyone that we're not officially starting the school day, which is still set prior to 8:30 a.m., and this recommendation also requires at least 1 morning rehearsal per week, which again would begin before that 8:30 a.m. start time. So I'm asking, how are we aligning the data provided by these 2 associations to the changes that we are recommending? What are our goals for student learning and achievement, and how are we going to know if we are successful in meeting those goals? I don't think we've taken the time to do that research on our current curriculum, on our instructional strategies, on our scheduling in regards to both the electives and BOC and how they're truly affecting our students. We haven't gathered enough information to make formative decisions on how to better meet the needs of our students, and I don't think we should be making any changes until this data is collected, until it's been analyzed, until specific goals are established to increase student success. Have we really taken the time to explore all of our options, as it's been said, to successfully integrate these elective choices and band, orchestra, and choir to best meet the needs of our Elmhurst Middle School students without the specific data? It doesn't seem like these recommendations are coming from an evaluation of the current program, recommendation from teachers who, quite frankly, are the experts in their subject area and the people working with their students every single day. In fact, I'm certain that there are other solutions that could better serve the needs of our middle school students, and I think we need more time to explore those. Any new educational initiative should be rolled out at a pace that allows for this relevant data collection, adequate planning, community and teacher input, with the end goal to better meet the specific needs of our students in District 205. I know I don't have a lot of time left, but I have to bring back what I had said a little bit in my November statement, was that the middle school model, the middle school philosophy, which focuses on developing well-rounded children, is really accomplished through these multiple learning opportunities and experiences. And this middle school model strengthens adolescents socially, emotionally, and academically to prepare them to be the most successful selves in high school and beyond, which is part of our vision and mission statement as a district. So for these reasons, I unequivocally am against the middle school recommendations, and I ask the board please to vote no against this for this proposal.
Thank you. Pete DeCiani.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Again, I am here regarding the middle school changes that are proposed and are on the agenda for a vote. I've written you from my office, and today I'm here as a dad. Brianna's an 8th grader. Many of you know Bree. She's doing great over at Bryan Middle School. She loves industrial technology. She said, "Dad, we stained some wood today," and she really likes the creativity and working with her hands. A lot of our kids are special ed. A lot of our kids have IEPs. A lot of our kids have learning disabilities, and Bree is one of those. I'm also a graduate, as many of you know, of the industrial tech program, and I started the company at 18 years old, which today is a 32-year-old company, which does a couple million a year in sales and employs quite a few people. most of which are York grads that came out of the same program that I did. My concern with Project Lead the Way is I'm concerned about waste of dollars. We're putting money into a new program, new computers, new investment, when we already have an existing program, Unified Arts, that has produced state champions and national champions in Skills USA. It's direct and parallel to our high school programs. We're a unit district. That's a great thing because we can actually get these kids a taste of what we have to offer at the high school. Project Leadway does not do that, and that's a concern that I have. Logistics. I don't believe that this was thought out. I don't know if you've seen an actual day of what these kids will be, what their schedule is going to look like. If you have, that would be interesting to see. But from what I understand, there's really no set schedule as of yet. So if I were you, if I was a board member, I'd like to see a schedule. I'm hearing 7th graders and eat lunch at 1 o'clock under this new program. It's too late. You might as well serve dinner at 1 o'clock. They're there at 8:15. So that's a concern. Again, I'm worried about this program cannibalizing our existing programs. Less choice, because right now, these kids that we have all go through the Unified Arts program. They all get family consumer science. They all get industrial technology. Now it's going to be pick and choose what do you want to do, and that's a challenge, because if the kids don't have the ability to get a taste of what they're going to possibly have in high school, we're going to see a program at the high school level which is immensely used. A third of our kids are enrolled in industrial technology and family consumer science at the high school level. That's a great thing. If they don't get that exposure in middle school, they possibly may not take those classes in high school because they didn't have the taste. So, and we are often a community that says, hey, everybody's going to Harvard, everybody's going to an Ivy League, and we all know that that's not the case. In fact, the number one college our kids are going to is College of DuPage. That's where many of my siblings went. And we have our president here, which is a great thing. So, and we have a great college locally. We have great others, Elmhurst College and other schools that our kids can take advantage of as well too. But I think it sets the tone. We're a middle class community. And we need to give kids a full comprehensive education. That's what that's what Elmhurst District 205 was all about. So in closing, again, I'm concerned with these changes in the middle school. I think they should be tabled, looked at, but I don't believe a school that's deficit spending nearly $2 million a year should be spending money on new programs when we've got existing programs that are doing excellent and producing positive results which are proven. So we got more state champions in industrial tech than we do have in the cross-country team, and I ran on both. So I had the privilege of bringing home a few state championships at both levels. So I encourage you, we've got a great program. Invest in the programs we have instead of starting new programs that we don't even know how they're going to affect and possibly cannibalize our existing programs. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all I.
Excuse me, there's another parent who would like to speak who missed to sign up. Is it possible?
Yes.
Can you still speak?
What is the name? Come on.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for having me, everybody. I actually came here instead of my wife. We have a toddler who's sick, and she asked me to speak. But basically, we have concerns around narrowing the choice of what students can do, just in terms of STEM. And I guess I could speak. I mean, I'm a software engineer at Google. I've been there for about 10 years. And I feel at this age for these kids that it's really important that they kind of have like a well-rounded education. They kind of have opportunity, that they can explore different areas in their brains. I think it's kind of a mistake in some sense if we try to say, hey, let's make everybody a coder. Let's shove them towards mathematics, because when you get to an engineering program in college, or when you get it deeper into the sciences, you're going to have all that. You're not going to have as much choice as you go through your educational career. So I guess we would ask that you please consider just to kind of like leave things as they are, because I would like my son and my daughter and our other 2 children to have the opportunity to explore these other disciplines, to kind of see and feel out like what they want to do in life and the experiences that they want to have. So again, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak, even though I wasn't on the record.
What's your name, if you?
My name is Stephen Milok. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to approval of board meeting minutes. I just want to say too, from public comments, is we don't answer at public comments, but we do follow up at a later date with the public speakers. So approval of board meeting minutes, we had December 12, 2017, December 27, 2017, and January 9th, 2018 minutes. Are there any comments to the three sets of minutes? Okay, hearing none, those will stand as presented. Superintendent's consent agenda. Items A through H. Would a board member like to remove any item from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through H.
Second. Moved by Karen, seconded by Kara. I need a roll call vote.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gaforio?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Epner?
Yes, that's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion passes. Superintendent's action items. Middle school program changes.
The rationale for this action item: after 2 years of exhaustive study and planning, the Board of Education is being asked to ratify the program changes indicated for year 2 of the middle school reorganization, consistent with the recommendation of the Middle School Task Force presented to the board on March 21st, 2017, and recent adjustments based on additional community feedback so that scheduling and staffing can proceed in a timeline consistent with the law and organizational needs of the district. The request includes the following: incorporate band, orchestra, and choir into the school day. Add Project Lead the Way to the middle school curriculum. Make world language a choice and ensure that students who take 3 years in middle school obtain level 3 standing as a freshman, and that students who take 2 years in middle school obtain level 2 standing as a freshman. Authorize the creation of semester elective courses in the Unified Arts for 8th grade students. The complete detailed proposal is included in the agenda, and the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the program changes for year 2 of the middle school reorganization.
A motion to discuss middle school program changes. Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education approve the program changes for year 2 of the middle school reorganization.
Second. Okay, moved by John, second by Kara. Questions and discussion? Do you want to start? Go.
Yeah, can we go through, and just so we're on the record of what some of it talks about recent adjustments based on community feedback. Can you talk through those adjustments and the process for getting the community feedback?
We had a Learning and Teaching Committee meeting in December, and at that December meeting, we discussed some of the feedback that we had gotten through public comment, emails, and all phone calls, and all of those types of things, and listened that night to some of the thoughts of the board and other community members that attended, and we hosted a town hall meeting last week to present the revised recommendations, and have continued to process any feedback that we got from that evening. We did have a survey on acceleration time that we gave, and we've been monitoring that with the students, but we gave a parent survey We took that into account. And the biggest changes that I would say that we're making, and then I'll turn it over to Mary for any specifics she would like to add, is that we're continuing to scrutinize the acceleration units that are being developed to ensure appropriate rigor. And we are continuing to monitor that program. We are also going to give band, orchestra, and choir students preference in signing up for their acceleration units. We are going to try to develop some professional learning for teachers so that teachers that don't specifically develop the units would be able to teach things outside of their expertise so that we have enough diversity in the units to appeal to student interest. And we are going to take a look at systems to provide some enrichment programming, particularly in Project Lead the Way for people that might not be able to fit that into their schedule during the school day. We are phasing in the band, orchestra, and choir proposal so that no current 7th grade students would be affected, and 6th grade students will have some extra time to plan how the next 2 years of their middle school would look. And that gives the music teachers a little bit more time to make program adjustments, and it also gives us a little bit more time to monitor student enrollment in classes so that we can effectively take a look at the impact of Project Lead the Way on staffing and space. But most of it, the big two are some of the things that we're going to do with acceleration, and then the phasing in of band, orchestra, choir over 2 years instead of 1. So would you like to elaborate on that?
So with the, as Dr. Moyer said, the phase-in of the band, orchestra, and choir was really done in response to feedback from parents and the thought it would allow our current students in 6th and 7th grade to have less of an impact on their current experience. Working with the department chairs of our vocal music and our instrumental music, it was discussed whether to roll that out over 3 years or 2 years. And the feeling of the department chairs that working within the constraints that I had given them of having it during the school day, that they would prefer to have 7th and 8th grade roll into the school day at the same time versus having 8th grade as the only band, orchestra, and choir group that met before school.
Okay, so, thank you. Mary, can you talk a little bit more? So you went and you had this conversation with the band, orchestra, choir, and I don't know if I should be talking to Mary or Dr. Moyer, whichever. But you had a conversation after you got this feedback from the learning and teaching meeting on December 12th. You got this feedback and met with the staff, the music teachers?
We met, I worked with the department chairs.
Department chairs,
yes.
Apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, so you met with the department chairs, and based off the concern that if you were to keep it in the school day, how would you do it best? And this is the process?
So working within, Dr. Cohen and I have met with the music teachers on more than one occasion during the year. So we had talked about the fact it was coming into the school day, that was what our recommendation was going to be. And out of that came their desire to have at least one morning per week to have all 3 grade levels together. That's why that's part of the proposal. And so then when, again, talking with, or listening to the feedback from parents, Dr. Moyer and I discussed the possibility of rolling it out over more than 1 year to lessen the impact on our current students. And so that is what I went back to the department chairs with and said, you know, given this feedback, if we want to lessen the impact, you know, here are a couple of options. What are you thinking of these?
And we went through the notes from the Learning and Teaching Committee meeting, and I know we have Jim and Kara here who are actually present for the meeting. I know they talked about the acceleration and the band, orchestra, choir. Were there other big points that they brought up that they thought were, besides acceleration and band orchestra choir? Were there other unanswered questions, unresolved issues that you can recall?
Well, I don't know so much as it's an unresolved question, is that one of the things we really need to be mindful of is how, what the impact is on students who have special education needs and might require a guided study, or are in our Tier 3 reading strategies class. And as we talk with parents, one of the things that we share is that those decisions really need to be individualized on the child and what the child needs. For example, is guided study something that needs to be done in that full 40-minute period? Is guided study based on the child's individual needs, what their identified learning disability is, what types of supports do they need? Is that something that could be done through or during that acceleration time? But that really has to be a decision that's made with the team, which parents are a part of. And so you can't have a sort of one-size-fits-all approach to that.
I think another one was when people talked about access to STEM opportunities and making sure as many people have access to STEM opportunities, and then in conjunction with the discussion of acceleration period, we talked about something that we're piloting primarily at the elementary grade levels right now called Defined STEM, and that is something that could be utilized at the middle school that could very easily help navigate some of those concerns, I think, and so I think we could be creative and take a look at that and increase the utilization of that next year as we've learned some things from how that can be used this year.
And actually, I've already had a middle school teacher reach out to me to get access to Defined STEM so that she could begin piloting it at Acceleration at Sandburg.
Okay, so could you, one of you over there, just discuss that about, let's talk about the sleep issue, because I've done a lot of reading and not gotten sleep. It's from what I read, but I'd like you to elaborate a little. I feel like it's not just about going to bed earlier. So why is this, I think that's a big question. Why is this an important part of this?
Sure. So as you look at the research and you look at child development, it's not just that need to go to bed earlier and have a certain number of hours of sleep, but in the developing adolescent, their natural body rhythms change, and so they become more prone to being awake later in the evening and then needing that extra time in the morning. So they're natural shifts in their body rhythms, not just that our kids are wanting to stay up late or they're involved in activities. So it's really about a response to what we know about adolescent growth and development.
Do you feel like you will be able to measure any kind of impact by, having less kids up early? Like we have a significant number of students that participate in band, orchestra, and choir. Significant.
It's about 30%.
So do you plan to track, like, okay, here's what our test, our test scores or an assessment, or do you have any way of tracking that next year if, there's less kids getting up earlier?
Well, there's a lot of markers that we could use. Certainly our student achievement markers are some. Some of it would be work with our school counselors and our school social workers and psychologists, because some of the impact that you read about in the studies are around the mental health area. Anxiety, depression, school refusal, just different things that are more social emotional than academic. So certainly looking at referrals to our student support services, that certainly would be a big part of it. Attendance, all of those things are data points that we monitor regularly anyway, and so those are in place to track.
while I'm on band. In general, can you give me a general estimate? Are the minutes pretty similar? Like, so if, my kid's in band now, are they going to miss out on minutes if it moves to the day, or is it, pretty close?
With the addition of, with it 5 days a week during the day, the sectional process doesn't change from what it is now. That seems to be one of the biggest cons or drawbacks from families, kids, teachers, is that sectional piece that takes place during the school day. We've looked, every school we went to visit said, please let us know if you find a solution to that. There just doesn't seem to be a good way to get around that. So that part doesn't change. So when you look at the minutes of 40 minutes during the school day every day, and then the one day before school, the minutes are very comparable.
I was there also on December 13th, 12th or 13th, whatever it was, and thought it was just a great process of taking public recommendations, ideas. And I was also there, was it last Tuesday? When we were
at the town hall,
the Commons, and I thought it was just a great idea to have the PTA Council lead a forum like that. Brought out a lot more different points of view. And I just want to say that I appreciate your going back and taking a look at these ideas and recognizing that, I don't know that what we had was the best ever and you should never touch it. I also know that you will be making some unintended changes when you make changes, and we'll find out. But I don't think this is in any way risking our music program to move it out of the early morning. And I appreciate your responding to the very real concern that we may be reducing choices. I think we're altering the way that these choices are exercised. And so it may look like a restriction. But what you've done, especially in paragraph 2 on page 3 of the piece that's posted on board docs, and I recommend everybody look at these changes, you've looked at places where we can overlap. We get inefficient and we increase choices when we put things in little cubby holes in boxes. And for the idea that we could move STEM into our acceleration time, we could look at options of study hall for those families that really expressed that study hall is something that they wanted for their kid, and to look at all these places where we can kind of just blur the lines between these little categories of courses that we have and get more efficiency out of it. And I'm going to say it right now, I think the PE waiver is going to be an important part of increasing choice. It will give parents, families to decide for their kid, not every kid decided by a rule, but their choice for their kid to take another option when they are getting physical activity in another part of their day. And so I personally am going to urge that we move forward on the waiver as soon as we get some guidance from the State Board of Education, so that we can make the flexibility, the blurring of these lines, the breaking down of these categories even more effective and efficient. So that's my piece. And I'm going to support this. I'm grateful that the administration went back to, after these public input, and added it to a process that actually had public input from the beginning. So, thank you.
Thanks. And John, just to add on to your comment about not trying to keep things in little separate boxes, when we look at the proposal for the semester-long electives and you look at the content for the music department, so what our general music teachers did was they went and collaborated with the high school music department and really looked at some of the effective practices and class sequences kids can take. And they've taken fine arts and blended it with technology, which is STEAM, if you want to expand on the idea of STEM, because not only does it involve instrumental music in a general music class, but it really focuses on production through technology, and is going to incorporate some of the production technology that our York classes and students use.
I'd like to just make an additional statement to that, because we hear about this sometimes, and it may get lost in the conversation because of acronyms. Our approach to STEM, and if you take a look, our high school principal has been very involved in a national organization, is that STEM isn't just about the isolated different areas included in that acronym. It's not just about science or just about math. It's about interdisciplinary learning. It's about problem solving. It's about students being active learners and truly creating things that didn't exist before. So it's really a lot about a mindset and about some of the things that we've been talking about with our overall approach to instruction, as it is just the individual components of engineering or whatever other word, whichever part you want to say. So, I guess I want to make that clear, because some of the people have said, well, this is all just about STEM, and I want people to understand when we say that, what we mean by it. The community has told us on multiple occasions that they would like to see us enhance and enrich STEM opportunities for students, but sometimes when you float words around it, people have different ideas of what that means, and that's kind of what we're trying to mean by STEM.
I have 5 or 6 things, but I'm getting over the flu, nor does anyone want to hear me go on for 5 or 6 topics. So if we wouldn't mind kind of rotating through. First of all, I just wanted to address something that Kara mentioned about later start times. My wife is board certified in internal medicine, and from the articles she's given me over the years, from things that shown up on our doorstep, that research is conclusive. Not only do kids perform better in school, they perform better academically, athletically, and in high school, their vehicle accident rate goes down significantly. It saves lives. And in my mind, this is why I'm such a proponent for starting high school as well as middle school later. Second thing I wanted to talk about is change. And my fellow board members have to forgive me, because this is about the 95th time I've said this. But, I ran 8.5 years ago because a work colleague, after I gave him an impassioned and, in my opinion, eloquent argument as to why he should move to Elmhurst, asked me why in the world with the state of your schools, and showed me that York was ranked number 60 in the state of Illinois. In the 8 years I've been on the board, we've made a lot of changes. We're on our 3rd administration, and I would like to think that each time we change administrations, we increase the quality and talent of management of this district. And I think we have an excellent management team today. If you take out, and I don't want to go on one poll, but let me just use one for the sake of brevity. If you use that Tribune poll that in 2008, we were ranked number 60, and you take out the Chicago magnet schools that have an entrance exam, in the most recent Tribune ranking, based upon the most recent SAT scores taken this spring, York is number 15 in the state. I think we've made significant progress. We have a significant way to go, because I think we deserve to be in the top 5. I think we can achieve that. But in order to achieve it, we have to change some things. So let's embrace change. Let's try it. If we make a mistake, let's be the first to either improve it or abandon it. And I guess I'll go into the third, and that's world language. One of the speakers at last week's community forum brought up a very good point. And this addresses the issue of choice in middle school. If you put your child into 3 years of middle school world language, and I have a college junior, and I ran into this myself. My daughter entered French 2H her freshman year. She then went through 3H, 4H, and then AP French. By the time she went to college, her world language requirement for the university was done. Had she not completed 4 years of high school world language in the high school, she would not have been finished. She would have had to take at least 1 semester of university level world language. This was a huge effort saver for her, since she's not a world language major. So I would highly recommend to any parent, as you're looking at that, unless you have a kid that is a language savant and wants to take one language in their middle school years and then switch languages in high school, as my second daughter is doing, I would only put them in 2 years of middle school language, have them enter at second year, freshman year, and use that 6th grade year for a lot of choices in UA, in other choices at the middle school level. I think your child will be well served by that practical advice. All right, at this point, I'm going to stop and circle back when you can.
If I could just build on Jim's world language requirements, because it actually speaks to some of the questions that we got. There was concern that students who completed the 3 years in middle school and so began high school at 3H, that there wouldn't be enough opportunity for them to complete 4 years of a language in high school, as well as some of the ACP requirements. So if I could just clarify that. So a student who does the 3 years in middle school, they will have the opportunity to either start at year 3 or year 3 honors. Our 3 honors is an ACP program. However, students as a freshman can't get the ACP credit. They can get the honors weighted grade credit for York, but Indiana requires that you have an existing high school GPA of at least 2.7 in order to participate in the ACP program, and so you have to be a sophomore. So that would allow them sophomore year to take the level 4 ACP course, the AP French or Spanish as a junior, and then there are options for us for their senior year. In Spanish, Indiana already has an ACP course, though as Ariana Leonard and I look at it, we both feel like it's not the greatest choice. It's Spanish grammar and context. So we're not sure that's going to be a real popular choice. There's a second AP Spanish course. Right now what we offer for AP Spanish is language and culture. There's also a Spanish literature and culture AP course. For French, there doesn't exist that second AP course, but what we are interested in doing is looking at the way we have our partnership with Indiana and looking at a potential partnership with Elmhurst College. Elmhurst College has some really what I think would make some excellent capstone courses. For example, they have business French, which could be a really nice capstone. They have business Spanish, they have medical Spanish. So given the opportunity to perhaps pursue that partnership. One of the positives of our partnership with Indiana is that for our students who are on free and reduced lunch, Indiana waives their fees. A lot of universities in partnerships with high schools don't do that. So any partnership we create, we want to make sure that we incorporate that so that we're not presenting any barriers to our students. But there isn't a worry that we will have a 4th year course for those students who enter high school at level 3.
Thank you, Mary, because that was going to be my question to follow up with Jim. And then the other piece that I had was to second John's point about having students in the district, we go through the district. I know that many of us parents wanted a PE waiver because our children were participating in various different, very competitive activities that gave them that benefit. And so I think that we owe it to our community and families to pursue the PE waiver options, look at how it would be implemented here in this district, first for us to look at the policy, and then we've heard from parents recently, and specifically band, orchestra, choir parents that are requesting that option. So I will go to the point of we have heard from parents, we'll continue to hear from parents, staff, and make the adjustments. I think that shows that we are listening and we are looking at, we've solved a lot of people's concerns. I know that when we were at the Learning and Teaching Committee that Jim and you all opened up to all of us board members to attend, and I did, that we even got to the point of, and you addressed it earlier, is, we'll have to look at individual cases. We can't design a $110 million organization for each student, but what we can do, to have it be an organization that, takes every student individually, but, in a way we are as we look at people's issues. And so with that, I really, I do laud the organization for doing that. For us having a lot of different forums to listen to people and then make the adjustments. I know that having kids in the district and out of the district, I remember many parents for a decade now wanting band, orchestra, choir in the school day. I know that with us implementing it in this opportunity, that we have, that it may look like they don't have a choice because there's so many choices. I think that it's very important. I remember when my 25 and 24-year-old now was in elementary school, we were hearing about updates in the middle school to make it more current. And I don't think that we're eliminating choice at all. We're not getting rid of options that are for some of our students. But there's also things that we're adding to this middle school program that are for some other students. So I think it's time for us to finally do it. I'm supportive. I know that even in the negotiations with the ETC, it was in the contract. They wanted it in the contracts for us to be looking at the middle school. And so we've had the support. We've had their support. We've had ETC leadership support. And so I think that it would not be in our best interest to go back on what we're moving forward on and just keep listening and keep making adjustments to make it the best. So the last piece that I have is, can we keep following up? How is it going? What's the status and progress that we're making? What feedback that we're getting, and what are we doing about it? And then the last piece was, I had a question. Okay, as you were talking about the sequencing for world language, which I think is really important, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting, is just like at the high school we have counseling, right? That helps the students and the parents understand their options and the choices. And a little bit, not mapping it out, because I really don't want, we do it enough in high school and, college and all. I don't really want us to get too, so rigid at middle school, but they do need guidance. So, to the options that Jim was talking about, in hindsight, we can say that, but you know what I mean? When it was my first, I would have wanted the education system experts to be guiding me through. What are my choices? What are the pros and cons? Here are what my students' interests are, our family priorities are, And then what does that look like if I choose different paths, and how do I make those changes along the way? Because the key thing is, if they're going to college, whether they do, I was a junior college grad too, you know, it worked for us. It didn't work for some of my other friends. So for various different reasons, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get options for all of our families here, because we have a variety of families here, and you know what students are doing. So will we have the guidance to help students and parents understand the choices and how they can make those choices and adjust them?
Yes, so that, so we have a meeting already, a parent meeting already scheduled for next Thursday, and the contents of that meeting will be based on the vote tonight. But we've split it into current 6th and 7th grade parents of middle school students, and then incoming 6th grade families, so that our school and it's at each middle school, so that our school administrators and counselors can be there to really walk families through. There'll be quite a few visuals and takeaways, handouts for them to take, and then they'll have approximately 2 weeks to make their selections.
As they have questions along the way, though, after that meeting, because like light bulb will go on,
Sure.
you know, the next day.
Yes, so then they'll be able to put a face and a name with the counselors at the schools and be able to reach out and get further support. And we also plan on posting those meetings and discussions on each school's website, so that families who can't attend can still get a chance to listen to that information.
And then, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to, like even PTAs at the buildings or PTA meetings, you know, where sometimes you get parents there?
Well, okay. and our principals attend all their PTA meetings, so they're certainly going to be continuing to be a resource to families.
We will be continuing to report on acceleration as we get the data and make the revisions, and make sure that everybody gets a year-end report on that, or interim reports as necessary. Also, with the course enrollment and different things like that, we can update people on you know, the trends that we're seeing in terms of student interest. We can explain some of the different things about when we know what the course selection is, how many teachers are being trained for Project Lead the Way, and how, you know, how those are going to be housed in the building. So there are multiple different stages throughout the next several months that we would be able to continue to share and make sure people were abreast as to what's going on. But if you see in the proposal, the middle school principals and Mary and Mark have been meeting weekly to take a look at all the nuances of the different planning things that we have to prepare for. And so there is you know, the course selection forms, the parent meetings, all these different types of things that would be coming up in the near future. There's been a significant amount of pre-planning to get ready for that.
Alice, so just following up on Karen's thought a minute ago about feedback and monitoring and change. You know, thank you again, as you've heard, for going through the process by re-engaging. I know it's been a multi-year process, but how do we make sure that that doesn't stop when it's implemented? So I would personally love to see the similar process gone through, not this year, but next year when it's implemented. At the end of next year, feedback, how can we adapt, how can we change? I mean, the world changes too. So even if you had the perfect program now, it probably wouldn't look the same a year or two from now. And so how do we, you know, continue, and particularly given all of the feedback we've gotten about all the changes in the middle school, as having a similar process annually as we roll these things out, I think would be very helpful, where we gather teacher feedback, parent feedback, student feedback, and so that we can have this discussion similarly again, what's working, what's not working, what are we changing, just to make sure that it doesn't get passed and get put on a shelf, and we hope it works.
No, I think that's a great point. And one of the great things that Mary Ann Lemke did before the school year started was met with our team leaders, our middle school team leaders, our acceleration committee, and engaged them in conversation about what are going to be some of our measurements of success. So it's not just the district administration that's saying, here are the only things we will consider as signs of success, but also drawing in on the input of staff who are the ones implementing the change. So that's where we've gotten some of those expected outcomes for acceleration, and what we want that to look like. We've continued to meet with the acceleration committee. I meet with them next week, where we'll be able to talk through some of the feedback gathered at the Learning and Teaching Committee meeting. So we would anticipate continuing to meet with our UA teachers to talk about the changes in the courses, our world language teachers, our band orchestra choir teachers. So we would continue to engage them in dialogue throughout the year, as well as putting some formal measures in place.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think acceleration is a case in point, and in principle I like the idea. We recognize that implementation is imperfect and can continue to improve. I don't for a second think that we're going to be perfect when we do this. I think that we have to have the right principles around it, and a willingness to look at ourselves and say when it's not. And then the last thing I'll just add is to John and Karen's point. I think in the interest of choice, I think something that really goes with this that I've heard a lot of feedback on from folks that have talked to me was the PE waiver again. And the idea of putting choice back in the hands of the parents. And if you really are for choice, then you're for that, I think. You're giving parents and students more choice around how they structure their day. And I think that with what we're doing, I think it adds a lot more flexibility for our kids.
To Chris's point, Dr. Henderson, what do you think if we were to schedule a Learning and Teaching Committee meeting for the month of May sometime, talk about the progress we've made this semester on those topics, particularly the acceleration period, and also use that as a forum to get some of our parents' feedback as to how they think it's going as well?
Sure, absolutely. I don't think that's a problem at all, and we actually already plan to survey the parents again. We did a formal survey in December, and we'll plan to do another one in the spring.
Okay, great. And then we can start with discussing those results.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Okay, let's get that on the calendar. Can I continue with the topic about acceleration? Just my thought on the acceleration period. We have kids who are challenged, and many kids who are challenging themselves, and I applaud those students. And those same students, a lot of them are involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, whether it's through the school district or extracurricular to the school district. And those kids, as a sign of our times, are under an enormous amount of stress. They're time crunched. So I would really like to encourage an option for the acceleration period to allow those kids that are time crunched, that perhaps are in reach courses and have a lot of homework, or just are experiencing some difficulty and experiencing a lot of homework in our regular curriculum, that they be allowed to use some acceleration periods as a study hall to catch up on their homework and the demands that we put on them, just so that they can keep up with the demands of their week and of their day.
And that's one of the topics on our meeting agenda for next week. Yeah.
Thank you.
So since we have all the principals here, I assume they were here for support. I'm wondering if we've gone through here, we've talked about a lot of things. What I hear the feedback is there's so much stress already in middle school, some of the changes that have been made. I hear feedback on teachers they're stressed, overstressed as it is. They can't do this. This is affecting the culture. If you're here now, can you respond to any of those comments? How it is, and maybe not, I take that back. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to ask you to respond to the comments. I'm going to ask you about how your environment at the school and it's how you see the school operating on a daily basis based off the changes that have been implemented, and what you think the impact these changes will bring.
I'll start. So as far as the changes that have happened this year, the 75 minutes in science and social studies, when the kids are in a science class and they're having a lab, they actually can complete that. I was in a classroom today and watched them, they were talking about how the seasons change and how the earth and the sun and the moon, and I tweeted out about it actually, and it really gave them a chance to go from start to finish on one particular part of a lab that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do in 40 minutes. So I see real advantages there. In social studies, I've had a couple of the social studies teachers tell me that they really like having the 75 minutes. They wish they had it every day, but there are things that they've learned to adjust, and we will continue to adjust things as we go along. With that, I see kids who are very engaged during acceleration, engaged in classrooms. The math teachers love the 75 minutes. They're able to really investigate Eureka Math, and it's really giving them an opportunity as they're implementing that to really put it into practice and really giving kids an opportunity to explore things and try new methods as far as like the stations for workshop. They're investigating that and trying that in math now, where with a 45-minute class period they wouldn't have had the time to do that. So that's been a real plus. ELA has worked things out. I mean, it's an adjustment for them, and it's an adjustment for everyone when you have a change like that. We are looking at what's working, what's positive. We are being focused on being grateful and focused on gratitude, and that's kind of how we're looking at it. Change is difficult, but people are embracing that. We've moved from one semester now, we started a new one, and I think it's going to be very positive for the end.
And a question,
Oh,
I
do you
guess
have
for
a
Gina.
question?
No, I mean, either one. Yeah, if Gina wants to take her
I
time.
don't have to do all the.
Okay. Yeah.
I second that.
Okay.
Sure.
I guess I'll just go back to the impetus for change. Like, why are we changing? And I said this at the last board meeting. Each year in October, we look at the student achievement data, and we have almost half of our kids not meeting or exceeding standards on our annual test. So we talk a lot about acceleration, but could you talk a little bit about intervention, which is for half of our kids, almost half of our kids, and how that's going? And that's the way to move everybody up. In what Jim's talking about, you don't go from 60th to whatever 15. Mm-hmm. You do that by moving everybody up. Yeah.
Sure, and I can start with even just seeing the difference in what we're seeing with our incoming sixth graders this year. The gaps that we were seeing, and we were hoping to close those gaps with Eureka Math. Since the implementation, we're seeing them go deeper and have a better understanding. That being said, with just our students in the Tier 3 range, we had 36 students coming into sixth grade in the Tier 3 range in math. Before this, we wouldn't have had a time for them to get that intervention time. So we're able to focus deeply with our students and seeing big gains with that. And jumping off of that, our students, one thing that I'm very excited about is the world language change. Not everybody wants to be in a world language. That being said, we also have students coming in from other communities that did not have world language in middle school, and they're coming in as an 8th grader to us and having to go into an 8th grade world language where kids have been in there for their 3rd year. And so that has been a big struggle without a place or a choice for them. And so to have that opportunity, I think, is a very big deal for us, and we're excited about that.
Had another question about starting later, or having band, orchestra, and choir during the day. You had mentioned in previous communications that it is about sleep, but there's also like staff and student benefits too, right? Students meeting with teachers before school, or staff meetings. Could you?
I think we can all agree that we love when our staff's together, and I'll kind of touch back to what Margaret was saying too. And it's really challenging for faculty meetings and time when we're together as a staff to get our BOC staff members there. They just can't be there. They're obviously working with kiddos. So I think we all look forward to having that time with our staff. I mean, that time is very, very valuable, and we want to support them. And so by putting that BOC in the day, that gives us that morning time back. And that also allows students to come in a little bit early. If they had a question on their homework, follow up on a project before they start their day, they can check in with teachers. And a lot of times with BOC, they don't have that opportunity to do that. So, and Margaret, just back to your point about, I think, supporting teachers through the change. I mean, I think I can speak for all of us. We all care about our staff, and they have done a lot. And I think we're proud of what they've done, and we're going to continue to support them in their work. You know, during our late arrival last week, we spent some time talking about the 6 C's and how we're going to blend that into our acceleration classes. We're brainstorming off each other. We're using Kagan strategies to help each other come up with new acceleration topics. So we're going to continue to support them because it is challenging and it is hard work, but we do care about them, and we're going to continue to support them as we do this. So yeah.
About Project Lead the Way. How long has Project Lead the Way been around? Has it been, what, 15 or 20 years? Or?
20 years.
Okay, 20 years. And how are we linking Project Lead the Way at middle school to the high school? Maybe this is for Mary. I know we're, Mark. Could you just elaborate that? I know you explained this to us previously, but if you could just briefly talk about how it's going to be through high school.
Sure. So Project Lead the Way is going to start next year, 6, 7, and 8. Eventually, we'll be teaching 6 different modules over all 3 years. So if a student takes Project Lead the Way 6th grade, they'll have one curriculum, 7th grade another, 8th grade another. But everybody's starting on the ground floor this year, especially with the design and modeling course. But starting the year after that, we'll need something to continue that pathway when they hit high school. So we're actually going to be arranging site visits this spring for our high school administrators and some of their teachers to go visit other Project Lead the Way programs. And there are 3 distinct Project Lead the Way pathways that you can embark on in high school, and we're going to be visiting all 3 of those and kind of making some decisions in terms of where demand might be and which way we want to go. Engineering is the most popular one, but there's also one for computer science, and there's one for medical careers. So we'll be looking at all of those. I can see the engineering and manufacturing lab that's going in at York High School that we're going to be doing some construction on this summer being integral to that. There's also another manufacturing curriculum that we're going to be looking at. So we have options there, and we're going to be exploring those here in the 2nd semester. But we really do want to continue the Project Lead the Way skills built, starting from middle school, working, from one level to the next to try and get kids to build upon not only their skills in CAD, but their skills in collaboration, working on projects with a group for an extended period of time, things that are open-ended, where we're not telling them you're building a car, but instead we're presenting to them a problem and they have to figure out how to solve it. A problem with constraints, a problem with challenges and materials and time, where they actually have to go out and figure out solutions. That curriculum starts in these smaller modules in middle school and then grows to year-long courses at the high school.
Project Lead the Way is one of the things that I wanted to comment on, if this would be an appropriate time. As Mark appropriately pointed out, Project Lead the Way may not increase your math ability, it may not increase your science ability, but a kid that's been through an engineering curriculum knows that an undergraduate engineering curriculum is a problem-solving curriculum. It teaches a student a structured way to solve problems using math and science. As every year I'm fortunate enough to be invited to participate in AP Career Day at York. Every year I point out to the kids at York that are in my session that of the top 10 highest paying undergraduate degrees, all 10 have the words either engineering or computer science when that degree is conferred. So why Project Lead the Way? Because if it sparks, and this nation is sorely short on engineers, if Project Lead the Way attracts more kids to the study of engineering, our society is better off, our economy is better off, and that's the reason for Project Lead the Way.
Just wanted to add on to what Jim is saying, you know, having a junior and looking at the college process. And I think I know the answer, but I would like you guys to confirm where in the curriculum currently would students have an opportunity to do anything with engineering?
We do have classes in career and technical education that allow students to explore that. We also have some project-based courses in science or courses that have opportunity, classes where students can, explore options. But really, the majority of our pre-engineering courses fall in the AP. So, for example, in science, you have AP Physics, AP Chemistry, AP Biology. Many of them are more focused on the academic skills and less on on sort of the problem-solving project-based skills.
Just, it was an interesting conversation that I had with, it was a junior. It was like, I didn't really understand what engineering was all about. They've been in the top science sequence, and they're just now going, oh, that's what an engineer does. And, I think, Project Lead the Way could be an opportunity for students to try that out. I think even acceleration just to taste.
We've talked a lot about rigor and relevance. It's something that we've trained a lot of people in. We've worked with the International Center for Leadership and Education, and rigor is what we do very, very well. AP courses are very well set up to push rigor, very in-depth but compartmentalized instruction. And so where we need to go, and we've talked a little bit about the interdisciplinary courses that were approved earlier this year, next year for York, combining our English language arts and our social science classes. We've had some discussions about what we're going to be doing for mathematics and science courses in general in our more academic courses, but setting up more opportunities where kids can take this academic knowledge and apply it to situations and work in an interdisciplinary fashion. Not only doing the math, doing the science, but then having to communicate it to others, having to defend a position, having to listen and process. All these are skills that we need to do more of incorporating into our curriculum, because it's not just important to produce kids that have a great transcript, because that shows what they know. More and more jobs now require the students to be able to do things with what they know. And so it's more important that what's more important is now what they can do with what they know, rather than just being able to hit that top mark on an AP test. Don't get me wrong, AP tests are very important. They save families money. Good grades in rigorous courses are key. They're essential to getting students into top-notch colleges and universities. But we should also be providing those opportunities for students beyond just the academic rigor, where they have the opportunity to apply what they know.
I really would like to comment on something, Kara, before we go in a different direction here, related to Project Lead the Way and the engineering pathway. Project Lead the Way is not just another opportunity for the top performing academic kids. It's a valuable experience for all students to be able to have access to some of these types of collaborative problem-solving endeavors. But for the ones who are interested in going through the entire sequence in high school, the capstone engineering class fits with some of our KPIs in that that's a class that in Moline, for example, when I was on the other part of the state, we were closer to Iowa. Iowa would accept that as their introduction to engineering class at the college. So when we talk about college experiences in high school or articulated types of experiences, that's an advantage. But when you combine the idea of the engineering pathway and the project lead the way curriculum with the business incubator concept, you now get these people that have the creative aspect, the design aspect, different interests from different backgrounds, and a capstone business experience as well, that all can be integrated into a student experience. And I know Jim will love this one, when you start doing these internships in high school, a lot of people, we just said, Kara just said, they don't really know what engineering is or what engineers do. And some of them find out they don't like it, and so then it gives them the opportunity to find that out before they're 2 years into their college and changing majors, et cetera. So those were a couple comments I thought were pertinent.
Also a parental money saver, by the way.
Well, and I think there's opportunities, things like Project Lead the Way and acceleration and some of the things that you all are already doing at the middle school that you allowed us to go see. Help students that might not be exposed to these things. So I know from my son who did engineering in college, their middle schools had these offerings, and so they were starting their own businesses in college. They were creating their own majors in college. So it was, it's for everyone. We can't keep thinking that it's for the top kids or whatever. It's for all the students to pique their interest and to open up that creativity and define themselves. But while we have the 3 middle school principals here, can I thank them? Because you sent us information, because you knew, we were hearing all kinds of things, and you opened up the schools. The staff was so supportive and so excited about what's going on, and that gets the students excited too. And so I really wanted to say thank you to the 3 of you for offering that and making great opportunities for us to see what's going on so we can see firsthand. I know that it's just one day at each school, but it helped versus not having that exposure. Thanks.
Yeah. One of the things as I go through here, and I know this has taken a significant amount of time, but I just think it's important, and I'm trying to figure out how we can get all of this communication out in front. So how can we do this? We talked about a communication plan or something in the process where there's actually steps outlined on, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is who we're going to talk to. So when we're bringing up this, and I know Dr. Morgan's not even looking at me because he's thinking I've got too much to do. But that's part of the issue. Because we don't have as much communication, we do a lot more of this. And we're doing a lot of really good things. But people don't even know. I didn't know that you'd went out and talked to the middle school team leaders. That's fabulous. It's as if people think we are making all of these decisions in a bubble. And as long as they think we're making these decisions in a bubble, then there's all this pushback. So how can we have a communication plan with every initiative that talks about what we're doing, who we're talking to, even longer term feedback, like, okay, we've got this in place and we're gonna do a survey of it 6 months after the fact. But putting that in so the community's not second guessing what we're doing. The board is not getting, all of these questions on what's going on or what's not going on. The staff is not getting all these questions, the administration is not getting all these questions when you're doing all of these wonderful things. But I just don't think people know. People don't know. And when they don't know, they make up stories. I know you're swamped. I know because you're doing so much, it's hard to do this, but we have a communication person. If you can feed her the information, maybe she can help put together the story for us so we can get it out there. Because I think that's what we're missing. I kept trying to go through here and saying, for this middle school process, everybody said they wanted it. The teachers in the negotiations said they wanted it. Where has this gone astray? I mean, that's the part that kept keeping me up. But I think it's a communication. We did not get out in front of this as early and talk about all the things we're doing. Yes, we had our updates, okay, but a more standard place where people can go and click and say, this is what's going to be done, this is what's going to be done, and this is what has been done thus far. I think that would help, but I'm open to get feedback from people who think something different or it won't add value.
Well, you know, we've been talking about that, and you know, I certainly think Malia can communicate her point of view if she's interested in adding anything to the conversation here or responding. But we've talked about some more standalone communications on things. We've talked about things like vlogs and increasing use of video. We, I think, have been celebrating good news on social media and trying to paint pictures better for people of what's going on in the school with kids. And we talked about having some periodic communications from learning and teaching that talk about the major instructional initiatives that, and I can't believe I used that word. I haven't used that word in 5 years. Why did I use that word tonight? I don't know. I'm getting tired, I guess. But I think, you know, a comprehensive package on some of those kinds of things, you know, I think we've started that process a little bit, and I think finding that communication piece is challenging for everybody. So I don't know that we have all the answers, but we've talked about things from comprehensive plans to simple strategies, like looking into a District 205 app, so people have kind of like one-stop shopping with the communications. So we talked about website functionality and seeing if there are ways that we can make that easier to navigate. So I mean, I hear you. I don't know that I have a specific answer for you, but.
Well, this is, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Mary put together a very nice communication plan for, in the last, for dual language. It was very simple. You said what, you had a date, you had who was going to be included, what was going to be discussed, and you had the stakeholders that this would impact. It doesn't have to be final. It does not have to be exact. It doesn't even have to be glossy. It can just be a general plan so people can take a look at it and see. And I go back and I think we did it before. If I'm not, I think when we did the Eureka Math, we did something like that, a communication plan, just so people can take a look at it and see, yes, there is a plan in place. Yes, they are going to get our input. They're coming to us. They're going to get our input. Or look, they've gotten our input 5 times already, and this is what we've said. I just think that has to be out there so people can see it. They can refresh their mind. They can refresh their memories. And we can kind of showcase the good things we're doing.
No, I agree. First, I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. Ariana Leonard really was the lead on dual language, and so I want to make sure that I credit her and the dual language committee that was parents, teachers, and administrators who really put that plan together. I think your points are very well taken. I think one of the issues that makes the middle school reorganization more complex is the number of years it has spanned. And so even if you were, your child may have been in 3rd or 4th grade when the process started, and you may have heard a little bit about it or maybe not at all, and now all of a sudden it's front and center because your child is middle school age. So I think there's a piece to that. When I presented last month on standards-based reporting, and we talked about the struggle we were having finding the best way to engage with parents on that topic, that we had tried parent meetings but found that attendance was really sparse, and posting it on a website, while certainly that's there, it doesn't allow for that two-way dialogue, and so we've been exploring. Chris had the suggestion of webinars or some sort of interactive media thing, so we're looking to explore that, to try and find as many ways to get people in to be able to dialogue. I do think the PTA forum was probably one of the most effective ways of getting feedback from parents through at least the portion of the middle school process that I've been involved with, which is the last 18 months. I just felt like we really got some great perspective, and several parents talked to us afterwards and they felt like they had a different take on things.
I mean, I think this is a big thing. And actually the bigger part, you guys tell me, happened last year when you got the 75 minutes, and that's more central to student achievement. This is about enrichment, this is about interventions and all that, but the bigger change happened last year, and I thought that was perfect for these big things when they happen. We're not going to ask the PTA Council to do everything on every little piece, but on those big things, I agree. It was very effective, and it's very good to have those really active leaders in the community moderating it, so that it's not just us talking to, or not just you talking to someone, but those community leaders are bringing it in as a forum in an open place. I just thought it was a very good evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so I met with a lot of people about the middle school thing, and I think almost every person in some part of the conversation said, I know there's probably communication out there, but I'm just not seeing it. And so I feel like, kind of like what Chris had said, where it's like, I think it's time to try some different things and see what takes. And, I think we all digest little bits of information better than too much because we're busy. I mean, you want to digest it while you're waiting to pick up your kid from something and you have 5 minutes. So I just think that is something for us to think about, and also to highlight. I mean, I look at our principals, I know they're working hard. Our teachers are working really hard, and there's some really neat things going on, and I feel like parents would love to know that. I think with acceleration, that's the communication part of that is part of everyone's maybe frustration of, I don't really know what my kid does. I don't know what the choices are. I don't know how they're necessarily choosing them. So maybe in the next few months, considering how you can articulate that to parents so that there's just, information if parents want it. If they don't want it, it's fine, but then it's available. And, yeah, I just think because, I have a child who doesn't tell me what's going on in acceleration, maybe once in a while. And so I don't need to know the details, but I would like to know, one thing about what's going on or why he's doing what he's doing.
No, I think that's a very good point. And even to have the information to ask of those children who aren't forthcoming with information, to be able to ask some specific questions versus, what did you do in acceleration today? Because the answer will be, It was fine. Nothing. But the principals and I, as part of our weekly meetings, the principals and I have talked about a couple of strategies for sharing more information, which we're taking to the Acceleration Committee next week.
To add on to talk about acceleration a little bit more, just, I guess, making sure that, we in this part of the room are supporting teachers, and is there a time for there to be a reflective discussion on what they need? As a teacher, until you're doing it, sometimes you don't really know what you need. And so I hope that they feel they can reach out for what they need, want, and that there's support for that.
So you raise a really good point. So over the summer, we met with our team leaders to put together a process for how kids would choose and be placed into the enrichment units. Well, they created that process in that system without having lived it. So they put plans together for what they thought would be the most effective way, but until you live it and work through it and see what the kinks are, you really don't know. So that group is coming back together to share ideas across the 3 schools, as well as talk through what's worked really well, what have been some of the challenges, and to problem solve that. Our teachers are very good about talking to their teacher reps who are on the Acceleration Committee. We have teachers from all 3 buildings, and they're really good about talking to those committee members who bring back. So part of every meeting is problem solving. What's going on? What do we need to do? How can we, each school was given a budget for resources for acceleration, but of course all schools want to maximize that, so how can we find ways to share resources across the buildings, and coming up with a system for that so we really get the most for our budget dollars. So those are some of the things that we currently do to get that ongoing feedback and for teachers to have a venue to reach out. And every school has their building leadership teams, which meet regularly with their building administration, where if teachers aren't comfortable themselves presenting a problem, they have representatives on this leadership team within the building where they can take those concerns and they can be worked through with the administrators.
I just have to emphasize this communication plan one more time because I don't want it to get lost. I think it's incredibly important, and it's a missing piece. It's a critical piece, is when we are putting together an initiative, a project, while that initiative is being formed, a communication plan is in conjunction with it. Not something that comes after the fact, after we do things. So while you're thinking about what this initiative is going to do, you're thinking about how you're going to communicate that information. And you're continually updating it. And I'll just use a real-life example. I negotiated international contracts for 3 years. Every time we had a contract that we put in place, we had a communication plan on who we were going to talk to, what we were going to say, what we wanted to get back from them. And this is incredibly important, because just like you have different diverse groups of people who need to hear information from an international basis, you've got that same group of people in this very diverse district. And when that process stopped, or when I've gone other places and that communication plan has not been in place, talking about effective communications, effective organizational development, it slows the process down tremendously. So again, I am very passionate on this. I think this is a missing piece that will help us for all the things that we need to try to get done, is while this initiative is going on, a communication plan in process, not an after fact. It's an important piece of the initiative, of the strategy.
Good, thanks. I think we're done with our questions. I wanted to add them. I want to thank you, but I mean, to wrap up though, I mean, I want to focus on students. Like, what's the best thing that you've seen this year versus last year with the changes, like, for students? Like, what transformation have you seen? Like, just if you give us one example, just to kind of summarize our long discussion.
I think I can think of several examples, but I will think of the one that just happened within the last day about acceleration and moving to one of our 7th grade teachers has been working with students who have been coming to her with ideas for acceleration. And so she's actually started an acceleration to help kids develop accelerations that they are going to come through the whole process using a rubric, presenting it Shark Tank style to us, and then we hope to run those accelerations in collaboration with a teacher. So students learning from students, students taking ownership, and we're really excited about it.
I have to go back to science. I have to go back to what I'm seeing that I didn't see last year. A beginning, a middle, and an end to a lab that otherwise was split over 2 or 3 days. And it's amazing for kids to be able to see that and experience it all in one time, all in one day. And I think that's just, it's just amazing. Whenever you go in, they're very engaged, and it's not like, okay, time, we got to stop, time's up. They're able to extend it and carry it through and see it through, and that's huge. That's been huge for me.
This one's for Dave Beatty. I would commend our math department. I've seen amazing changes in math. I think our staff has come a long way in being reflective on their practices and deciding different strategies to use during those 75 minutes. And when I'm walking in those math classrooms, what I'm seeing this year compared to what I'm seeing last year is night and day. Kids are up, they're moving, they're engaged, they're working together. They're struggling through problems together, and that's something that I hadn't always seen. So I've probably seen the greatest change in math this year. So.
I would like to thank our principals for doing a tremendous job with social media this year. If you want to know what's going on in each of the schools, these guys are posting every single day. We've set up our social media so we have a common naming convention all across the schools. So you can go look at Bryan D205, Churchville D205, Sandburg D205, and we're on Facebook and Twitter. And if you just follow those handles, you're going to see examples every single day because they're doing a fantastic job of getting the good word out about what our kids and teachers are doing. Thank you.
And it's all housed to it. We tag almost everything that's related to the student piece at #IgniteD205. So you can follow the individual schools. You can also, look there, and all the stuff goes there, or most of it does.
We have an actual social media page from the district site, so it's www.elmhurst205.org/social media D205, and it's got all of the handles on there. You can just click on there. It's got like a running post of the things that are tagged at #IgniteD205. So there's a lot there. We just need to maybe do a better job of steering people in that direction. So I didn't want to lose that opportunity to put that out there.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Coforio?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Epner?
Yes, that's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion passes. Approval of 2018-19 school calendar.
Okay, the calendar committee probably had the smoothest run since I've been here, and Jim Wohl, who kind of steers that, Dr. Wohl certainly would attest to that as well. We had kind of a natural calendar that made it a little bit easier, admittedly, but we also feel very happy that we were able to do something that the community's been asking for as well, which is A, get it out earlier, but B, be able to do a 2-year calendar. So we have two separate motions. One is the 18-19 school calendar, and one is the 19-20 school calendar. So calendar committee made up of representatives from District 205 employee groups, PTA representative, met in a series of meetings to discuss and make a recommendation concerning the 18-19 school calendar. So the result of these meetings, the committee is submitting to the Board of Education their recommendation for the school calendar. In this calendar, the first day of school for all levels will be Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, and the last day for all levels will be Friday, May 24th. However, the last day could be extended up to 5 days, depending on whether any emergency days are used. Winter break would begin on December 24th, 2018. Students returning on January 7th, 2019. Spring break will begin on March 25th, with students returning on April 1st. Institute days, August 13, 14, October 5, January 21. Parent-teacher conferences are also listed, and the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the 2018-19 school calendar as presented. I won't reread all the specific dates for the second rationale, but that is similarly formatted based on how the calendar falls in that second year.
Okay, need a motion?
Like to consider items B and C together by making the joint motion that the Board of Education approve the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school calendars as presented.
Second?
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Oh, moved by John, seconded by Margaret.
There's a look on your eyes, Mary, that says I freelanced a little bit on that. Is there an issue with that?
No, not at all.
Okay. I thought we could save a little time. I think the issues are the same. This is the first time I've seen two calendars in front of us, and I want to thank the administration for getting out in front of things. People are saying, oh, when's graduation day? When's that? Well, now, folks, you now know when it is, and you know when you have a college graduate the same weekend as a high school graduate.
Okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Approval of donation from District 205 Foundation of designated donation for York High School. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have two donations. This is the first one. The Friends of York Baseball is a group of community members that are committed to helping improve baseball facilities at York High School. They've been talking about this for a period of time. They have worked in conjunction with the foundation on this project, and we would recommend that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation from the District 205 Foundation on behalf of the Friends of York Baseball for two sets of bleachers valued in the amount of $19,450. The donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, gifts to the district.
Wanted to say that.
Oh, okay. What was that? Well, I thought that, I didn't see that as the motion, I guess. I thought that was just part of the rationale. I kept reading. Sorry, Chris, you want to say it? You could say it again.
I think I have to. You're stepping on my line, Steve.
I think you should. I think you should.
All right. I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation from District 205 Foundation on behalf of the Friends of York Baseball for two sets of bleachers valued in the amount of $19,450. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 8.80, gifts to the district.
Second.
Moved by Chris, seconded by John. Go ahead.
Can I say thank you? Thank you very much to the Friends of York Baseball and for our foundation for helping them. We are fortunate to have a generous community with a great foundation and great charitable organizations, and we really appreciate it.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Present.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, it's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion carries. We have approval of donation for Sandburg.
So parents Keith and Aline Mankin, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and daughter Maria are offering to donate a new sound system for the Sandburg Auditorium. The Sandburg, the sound system there is very dated, and so this is welcome. The value is $5,848, and in addition, they will be intending to help assist with performances and productions associated with the programming at Sandburg. So I'm going to stop there.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation of a new sound system for Sandburg Middle School in the amount of $5,848. This donation is accepted in accordance with policy 8:80, gifts to the district.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by John, seconded by Chris. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say many thanks to the, and I hope we're saying it right, because it's very generous and they deserve having their name saying. Is that right? Mankin? All right. Well, thank you very much for your generosity, willingness to share their generosity with the fellow Sandburg families. As someone who sat in the balcony of the auditorium and tried to make out what was being said, I can appreciate getting some vicarious pleasure out of this. So thank you very much for your generosity and support of your school system, or your school community. I do have one question. It's been brought to our attention when there are generous donations of that we are working very diligently to make sure that we do not have disparate environments, learning environments among our schools. Obviously, there's no auditorium at Churchville. There's 2 gyms, however. But I just want to make sure that one of the principles that's through our policy manual is that of equity. Equity doesn't always mean identical, but it does mean equitable and equal in function and result. And I just want to make sure our administration is keeping an eye on the ball of that when we very gratefully accepted a donation such as this for one community by people dedicated to their own school community. So it's less a question and more of a reminder. So thank you.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Coforio?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Present.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
So it's 7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. Moving.
6 ayes, 1 present.
Oh, present, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
6 ayes,
Oh,
1 present.
sorry about that. Okay, 6 ayes, 1 present, that motion carries. Superintendent's communication.
4 Freedom of Information Act requests were received, 1 requesting a specific contract and invoices, which was granted, 1 requesting specific residency information, which was partially granted and partially denied, 1 requesting specific purchase orders, which was granted, 1 requesting employee information, which was partially granted and partially denied. My second item is just a quick note that the district management group annual superintendent summit, let's see if I can find that here. Oh, do you? Okay. Talked about leading change during changing times, and it's in the packet, so I won't go over a lot of detail, but they always do a case study as part of this, and that is very interesting, and a lot of it had to do with an idea of what they call a breakthrough approach, which we'll be circling back to later in the spring with our principals as we get into our school improvement planning process, because I think it'll fit very nicely with that. And then several other very interesting activities that were very enlightening, including a Skype session with Los Angeles Unified School District, officials and some of the work they're doing out there. So it's just a summary so that people are informed of the different types of things that we're trying to do to embed some of this work in our district. And then I would turn this over to Chris, who wanted to give you an update on some financial information.
I have it. I have in the pack. I have the monthly financial packet that we produce every month. So it has a narrative and charts and graphs, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail. Just point out a few things. On the revenue side, at budget time, I talked about some of the state funding with the new evidence-based model, and how they were moving some of the mandated categorical special education and the bilingual grants into the general state aid. So that line, as expected, is 85% higher than last year. But if you look at the operating funds actual compared to budget, right now we're at 49.4%. So we're right on target budget-wise at this point in time, but the revenues are up 6.9% last year, and from last year, and that's really that state funding timing issue that we talked, where the state was going to catch up somewhat on their delinquent payments because of that change in funding and moving all those different revenue sources into the general state aid line. And right now, property taxes are right in line with what we budgeted at this point in the year. But I think there were some stories in the newspaper about lots of residents prepaying property taxes at DuPage County related to the change in the IRS federal government. So, and I know a few people who did it, and there was a long line there at DuPage County. So the concern there is that just in June, I am anticipating that our property tax collections in June might be higher than they've been in the past. And when you're talking about a tax extension of over $100 million, if it's 1% difference, we're talking about $1 million difference. But the audited financial statements are on the accrual basis, which helps to smooth out, timing and timing differences in collections. So the audited financial statements will be more of a normal, even stream. But with taxpayers paying their full year of taxes early, I'm anticipating that the June taxes will be more than budgeted. That wasn't anticipated at budget time, so that would the cash basis revenues might be higher than budget because of that reason. And I wanted to give you a heads up to that potential difference. But what that does is push the revenues up a few months into this fiscal year as opposed to that fiscal year on a cash basis of accounting.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on that, so you'll end up showing income this year on a cash basis, and then in order to get that shifted where it needs to, you'll run a deficit next year to pull it back out of fund balance. Is there anything we can do from an accounting perspective to reserve it or put it somewhere so that it's, I mean, I would accrue it based upon historical percentage of June pay. I'm just saying it's going to cause, everybody's going to say, hey, look, they made a bunch of money this year. And then what we really did is we collected it in advance for September. So come next year, the budget deficit is going to look ugly if as many people did it as I think might have.
So it's just on the cash basis. The audit will not show that. The auditors will always recognize 50% of the extension in June. And
right,
then
but
the
our
difference
budgets
in the
and
fall.
all of this stuff is cash basis. All the stuff that we put out every month,
right?
Is all cash basis. So it's, okay. So well, I'll tell you what. When we get the June payment, can we just talk about how we want to talk about that? Yeah. Maybe there's an asterisk next to everything, and the amount that we believe is pre-collected for September, we can at least call out, highlight, so that everybody knows.
we can't. And I just wanted to call it to your attention in advance so there isn't a surprise in June because I am anticipating that will be the case.
Yeah, it's going to look like we ran some big surplus this year, and then next year we projected some nasty deficit.
Right. We budgeted a deficit, and now we're going to have a surplus, and that could look wrong. And I wanted to make sure you know that could be the case.
All right, moving to board communications. Are there any updates from board members? Oh, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
It's nice to hear from you. We miss you, and we want to hear more from you. No, I made the joke, but in seriousness, this is one of the central things that we do. I mean, it's guiding the professionals and adding community values to the professional provision of education. But one of the other central roles that we as a board have is discussing the fiscal condition of the school district and hopefully communicating with our taxpayers and constituents and having them communicate back to us the things that they expect and the things they see and the questions they have as well. I'm just wondering if we could pull these financial reports off a little more often, maybe quarterly instead of semi-annually. I know we go through it when we go through the projections in late winter, early spring. But just plan on having this be a regular thing so that this very important aspect of the condition of the district gets, gets some equal billing with some of the educational things that have been taking center stage lately. We just talk about it's just an idea and no commitment now, but just to think about having a little more communication about the financial condition of the district being a little more central to our meetings.
Okay, board communications. Are there any updates?
Tomorrow night, the Board of Education will attend City's TIF 6 Joint Review Board. The city has a tax increment financing plan in the works. One of the legal requirements is going to a public hearing to talk about it with those taxing bodies that may be affected by this reallocation of tax funds toward redevelopment purposes. It's very complex, but it's also very fundamental since it involves significant policy discussions about how taxpayer dollars are allocated. It's very dry. It's at 5 o'clock tomorrow. It's not timed well for people to attend, but it does have strong impact on our district, and we will be attending and participating in the Joint Review Board. And we're examining some of these rather significant plans of the city of Elmhurst to propose a new tax increment financing district, TIF 6, if you're counting, within the city of Elmhurst.
Okay, we have 3 upcoming meetings on this agenda. This Saturday, January 27th at 9 a.m. here in the District 205 Center. The board is going to have a facility discussion. Tuesday, February 13th, Board of Education meeting, 7:30. And Tuesday, February 27th, Board of Education meeting at 7:30. So we've reached the end of the agenda. I'll declare the meeting adjourned.